Hey, welcome everybody. On today's show, OpenAI just recently released their blueprint for America, and it could really reshape how America's future works. At stake, they're saying there's $175 billion in AI, in global AI investments. That's their number. In new industrial revolution, a race between democracy and autocracy. There's a lot in this paper, but it really brings up some of the questions we want to get into today, which is like, can America transform its infrastructure, its workforce, its regulatory landscape to be fast enough in the AI age? We're starting to see some of the things that are coming out of the UK, who are already starting to move in this area, and OpenAI definitely wants to be part of the national strategy and integrating what they want to go along with political policy as well. So we're here to talk about all that today. We have Eran, Andy, and I'm Brian. And this is the Daily AI Show. It's January 17, 2025. Thank you to everybody jumping into the comments. Morning, Justin. Thank you for being here. So this is a really interesting paper. And Eran, I know you said you've done a lot of research. Andy, I know you probably read into it too. I did not take the AI shortcut. I read through all 15 pages, put my big boy pants on and read 15 whole pages. And then I went to
GPT for a review.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to read it through myself and obviously just comprehend what I could. I came up with some, thoughts or whatever. And then I absolutely went into like perplexity. It started asking questions, things about the 175 billion figure. Where did that come from? So on and so forth. But before we get into all that, it's probably a good idea to maybe just give an overview of this paper. It just came out. Like, what is it sort of looking at? I can, in fact, even bring it up on the screen as well. And then, I don't know, Andy, do you want to kind of kick us off here as far as, your overarching thoughts on this paper? And I'm going to bring it up on the screen and we'll look at some of the pieces as well.
Sure. So this is a very interesting thing that, in a technology company, which, obviously has some serious national security and global economic dominance potential. To have the CEO and the senior executive team of that company put out an appeal, really what it is, for a coordinated approach between the government and the private sector, including OpenAI, to maximize the benefits of AI and ensure that the investments are made that'll secure U.S. leadership to keep superintelligence in the hands of democratic global partners and not in the axis of China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia, which are also probably making substantial investments, but they don't have other than for China, don't have the scale of investment potential if the government and the private sector coordinate and cooperate. And I just, what a quote from the paper is, "This is too powerful a technology to be led and shaped by autocrats." Little ironic because, we're about to have an autocratic government, which is an oligarchy in the United States. But, we're still a democracy, right? At least. Yeah. So, and what they're really trying to avoid is that we don't put super intelligence in the hands of organizations where a few powerful, wealthy people make all the decisions. Again, isn't it ironic? Now, it's like the 1960s Sputnik-inspired fears of domination from space that created the space race, which fueled an enormous investment in technology to achieve the moon landing. And the quote from the paper is, "America's faced such moments before, and we know how to think big, build big, and act big." Now they do as part of this paper say that they want to, as a sort of a facet of it, ensure that AI benefits everyone, not just a select few, and that it's in these democratic centers, it's in an environment of fair competition. So I'll just finish with one last quote, which is, "We believe that building enough infrastructure is not just vital for ensuring that AI around the world is based on US rather than China-based technology. It's an unmissable opportunity to catalyze a reindustrialization of the US." And so you get the feeling that there's a clear, the paper goes on to provide specific proposals for chips, data, energy, and talent development in order to maintain supremacy in the AI realm. But one of the things that came out of it for me was they want sharing of national security related information and resources with the US AI companies. So you can see almost the AI companies are saying, bring us into the fold of the government. And they want to form a consortium of AI developers to better work with national security agencies. So while there are some other sort of more population-centric investments that might be made, this I read as a national security briefing from OpenAI to the government saying, here's what we must do together in order to avoid an autocratic domination of the globe.
Yeah, and I want to bring up a comment that came from Chris McKay. He wrote this, it's on this website called Imaginative, without the I, just imaginative.com. And I thought he did a great job of talking about how, look, there's no accident to when this paper comes out, right? This blueprint comes out. There's zero accident to it. We're days away from, as you mentioned, transitioning presidency here in the United States. And there's a lot of jockeying for position. And Chris in this article does a phenomenal job of breaking it down. I'll get to another point he has in a moment, but he basically calls this blueprint a masterclass in lobbying and policy making, and making it so that OpenAI's needs and wants marry very, very well with national security. And so it's no accident. These papers don't just come out. When you read this paper, all 15 pages, it's very well read. You get the impression, at least I did, when you read through every word on every page is there for a reason. This is not a rush job. You don't put this out. And so I wanted to look as well to who the author is of this. And the author is Chris Lehane. And Chris Lehane has only been with OpenAI for 10 months. Other than where it shows he's an operating partner at Hahn Ventures, his real experience comes as the senior VP of policy and communications at Airbnb, which he held that title for 7 years and 3 months. So this is certainly somebody who's got the pedigree in the background for doing this type of communication. And it's not a surprise to me that his name is the author on this particular blueprint. But I just want to bring back to the point before we dive into the actual specifics, Eran, get your thoughts on stuff like that, that OpenAI, this is not unusual. OpenAI is jockeying for position in a future government and trying to get the nods and stuff like that, especially in a government that's already sort of buddying up a little bit with Elon Musk. I almost said the wrong one. Elon Musk of the world, and things like that, and that could give them preferential treatment. Also, before we dive into the OpenAI, I want to make it clear: OpenAI is not the only major AI tech company that is doing this. When you start diving into it, and Eran, you could probably talk to this more because then you follow a lot of like the military and military structures. Anthropic, absolutely, they've made Claude available to defense industry. They've gotten all the way up to it's the level before top secret, and they make Claude available in ways to the defense industries. They are working directly with Palantir. They're Microsoft, same thing, DoD, and all that kind of stuff. High levels of security, giving people customized, language models. So this isn't unusual, at least the way I see it. This is not unusual, and it's just OpenAI trying to make sure that what they're trying to accomplish and what they want to do as a company aligns very well with what the U.S. could put in place to continue to be the leader in AI, technology and leadership and stuff like that. But so anyway, so I just want to kind of bring that into. But Eran, let's get your initial thoughts after you read it, because I know you said you took a ton of notes on this as well. And what I love too, by the way, for anybody that doesn't know, if you couldn't tell by Eran's accent, Eran is, he would say he doesn't have an accent, so that's fair. But Eran, you live in Perth, Australia, right? So you're looking at this now, you're outside the United States and looking at this. So I'm really interested to get sort of your perspective on this as well, as somebody who's not in the States.
So I sometimes claim I'm the token foreigner in this group, but Carl kind of fits into that category as well. So I have to give him a nod there. So look, I took a lot of notes. First thing I'll say before I sort of launch into a lot of that stuff is reading this really reminded me of my early days in the IT industry, where you had these major players that became market dominant organizations who really had a lot of impact and a lot of control over what happened in the space. And companies like Microsoft, for example, and then Google, and then Facebook, and that sort of stuff. So I think OpenAI is kind of fitting into the slot of maybe the next major company. The difference is that this one is, we're not talking about some technology, computery stuff. We're talking about, I don't remember who first said this or where I read it, but we're literally talking about the keys to nuclear warfare in some respects, because, you know, if push comes to shove and this all goes pear-shaped, it could be the, and look, I'm trying not to do the scary Terminator stuff, but, you know, look, realistically, it could happen.
Mm.
And I don't think that AI is the problem. My concern is that it's humanity that's the problem, because we've got our own biases and our own crazy stuff. And so AI is being built off what we put out into the world. And so that's sort of my major concern. That aside, the first comment I wrote at the top of page 1, well, page 2 actually, because page 1 was the cover, was there's a lot of Pollyanna words in this. It reads, and Brian, you nailed it. It's almost like a what's the word? It's like a propaganda piece to some extent, and I understand that, you know, it's being positioned, as you say, to impact what's going on politically in the US at the moment. And although I know that, for example, Elon Musk is really close to soon to be again President Trump, I don't think Musk and Sam Altman have any love lost for each other, so that might be a positive, unless Elon gets kicked out of the inner circle.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like I read through this and went, man, there's just so many things there this could go wrong. You know, my biggest concern is the state of mind of the new administration coming into power. You know, I could go off big time about who's coming and what's coming. I'm going to tone it down. Andy said worse than I was going to say, but there are some concerns. You know, definitely this is going to be a US first, and excuse my fingers, but screw the rest of you. And as someone who lives in a foreign country, I'm guessing if the Trump administration rubs a lot of people up the wrong way like they did the last time, then there's going to be a lot of other countries around the world, and I'm not talking about China and Iran, I'm talking about Europe particularly, where they might just take the view that, hey, we're not going to subscribe to the America first thing around AI. We'll do our own thing, or we'll align with somebody in our own country. And we could end up with this whole thing fracturing, and then it just becomes a race to who gets to AGI first, as it were. You know, if you look at Mistral, so that's a French company, then I could see France maybe getting behind that, etc. So I'm not sure what some of the other countries are doing, but I don't see this as, it's not just a US. I think the US attitude has to be that if OpenAI is serious about what they say in this, rather than just a fluff piece, then they need to sort of tone down the America first rhetoric. I think that's going to rub up a lot of people up the wrong way. Nothing against America. You guys are all American. I love you all. But, you know, I think that kind of needs to happen. But, you know, as you said, Brian, at the end of the day, the big concern for me is that, you know, the new administration, which takes power in 3 days, I think it is.
Yep.
And we know that, you know, the message has been consistent from day one. It's America first, and yep, that's fine. That's what the people of America have voted for. But it just depends on what kind of guardrails are put around this whole thing. Because if, you know, like we're starting to see all the major tech oligarchs are sort of schmoozing up to the president and donating $1 million a pop to his inauguration thing and blah blah blah, just to protect themselves, I guess. How much is that going to impact the whole OpenAI thing? I have some concerns about some of the people at the company. So you know, David Sachs, for example, who's the COO of PayPal. So obviously he knows Musk. He's been involved with Craft Ventures, which funds AI and crypto startups. You know, how can he be unbiased in managing the US policy on AI and crypto, for example, when he's in a business where it's to his benefit to, you know, tweak a few things around the edge or just go full in and say, look, just that's it. We're going to, sorry guys, apparently my internet keeps cutting in and out. That's because we're in a foreign country and I have to pedal the electricity
Yeah, it's okay.
to be able to get things
We're
working.
not we're not missing any of what you're saying. It just does a pause, but it doesn't actually cut off some of your words. It just catches up in like a half a second. So it is what it is. I mean, like you said, it's your internet, and it's after now 11 p.m. at night for where you are. So we're just happy you're here, Aaron. We're always happy when you're able to join and bring a perspective to it. And I do want to bring just one point before we get back into the actual blueprint, because I want to break that down and look at the main sections and some of the corollaries they set up in that paper, and obviously get Andy you into the conversation as well with that. But just to point out, it's not as if the US or OpenAI is suggesting that, hey, AI would be the first, or I'm sorry, America would be the first to do this. As a matter of fact, just a few days ago, the UK government unveiled the ambitious AI Opportunities Action Plan, designed to position Britain as a global AI leader through massive infrastructure investment and public-private partnerships. The plan, which has already secured $14 billion in private sector commitments, represents a strategic pivot from UK's previous focus on AI safety to actively pursuing AI development and adoption. This is really interesting. Number one, if you read through their AI Opportunities Action Act plan, it is almost lockstep with what OpenAI is talking about in the blueprint for America. The difference is UK is already moving on this. They're already moving towards infrastructure. They're talking about having AI growth zones in Cullum and Oxfordshire and a couple others. They want to create over 13,000 jobs, driving UK economic growth. They have a new national data library, which will unlock public data for AI research, fostering safer and more effective AI applications. We'll get into the OpenAI blueprint. The UK is already moving forward on their plan to do this, and it does mirror quite a bit of what we're seeing. So there is precedent out there. I'm sure other countries are doing it as well. I can't speak to the EU and others, but the UK absolutely is taking this serious. And what I find really interesting is what I just said in that opening paragraph. By the way, that summary also came from the same guy, Chris McKay. Just really like his articles. He did a great job with them. But so I want to give credit. But he's right. If you watched what the UK did just a few months ago, they were jockeying and talking about position. They put out some stuff in 2024 that was about safety, and they were sort of leading the way there. And there's a distinct difference here, as they're saying, no, we can't just be in the conversation. We want to be leading the conversation on this and AI infrastructure and stuff like that. Very interesting, very similar. So just wanted to bring that up as a, something to think about here as we talk about the AI blueprint. But Andy, please.
Yeah, I want to just add to what Eran was saying about America First, but with a slight twist here. I think that OpenAI is not an America First kind of entity. They are appealing directly through their blueprint for a strong alliance and a compact among U.S. allies to organize supply chains for chips and models to ensure that only the sort of the democratic alliance of countries have access to whatever the U.S. produces and vice versa, so that there would be a real, in their vision of it, it's not Elon Musk and XAI driving the thing from the seat of government. Mm-hmm. It's, hey, we want the government to go forward with our alliances, not America first, screw the rest of the world. But I don't know. I don't know what the political leanings are in terms of global geopolitics for OpenAI, but that's what my reading was. Because of that, this specific request that there be a compact for supply chain development around AI among our partners.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I will say, I can completely understand that this paper has been written and the position has been pushed as America First. I get that. That's fine. I just think that there's going to be other countries around the world who may not subscribe to that, particularly if we start to see the political situation deteriorate. You may find that other people just want to go their different ways. And then I still think it comes back to a race to see who gets to AGI first. In a perfect world, everyone in the world would have, and this is, as I understand, this is what OpenAI was created, was supposed to be a, what's the term? But the product was supposed to be for the whole world. And in ideally, we'd have a world, not a world government, but at least the nations of the world all sort of largely agreeing on the same things and sort of pushing this for the benefit of everyone. As I said, my concern is that this is a human problem, not an AI problem, and humans are the tricky part of the whole procedure.
I think it's interesting, because interesting enough when I read it, but I love having your perspective here as somebody who's not in the United States. Like, I definitely read it more of a Cold War type talking points where they were making clear distinctions about US
Totally.
versus China, and they mentioned China. That's the other thing, by the way.
Yeah, they mention it 3 or 4 times at least.
They don't pull punches on specifically mentioning China as the Communist Party and having that, like, is that where you want your AI? Not that there was like fear mongering in there, but they definitely bring that up several times. I mean, China by name, not other countries. So I definitely felt like it had this sort of Cold War era to it. And the other thing they did was they tried to they did link it to like industrial revolutions. It sort of gives some similes there about like what the comparisons would be. So like for the automotive area, this is some of the differences, right? So they compared it to automotive. So like you had road infrastructure, automotive, and how the federal government put out the national highways, right? They didn't wait for the states to decide how the highways would go. And you could imagine what the United States would look like if every state had been in charge of building their own highway infrastructure. We wouldn't have clear roads that went through all the states like we do now. Like, and the even numbers go one way, the odd numbers go another way. It's a definite federal US system of highways as opposed to leaving it to the states. So they talk about road infrastructure. On the AI side, that would be the digital infrastructure to compute. On one side, on automotive, you would have national highway system. They're talking about a national AI infrastructure highway and how these different parts and pieces connect, because they mentioned that. You have mass production capabilities. They're talking about chip manufacturing and data centers, right? They talk an AI on the automotive side, public safety regulations. They want AI safety regulations. So they really do a good job of sort of trying to go back in the past and look at something that the US has gone through that most people are familiar with, the national highway system, and say, look, there's a lot of similarities here. We're just saying that the US has done this before and we need to be doing this again. We don't need to let this get splintered out because it's not going to end up keeping us, in the position we need to be for global safety, so on and so forth. Again, that's where they go back and seem to mention China and stuff. So really interesting how they kind of put those two together. And they also use one other example that also has to do with automotive. There was, I guess, the way the UK did it back then, it was like riddled with policy. I can't remember what that was called. But the UK's Red Flag Act, which had to do with balanced regulation, encourages, it wasn't encouraging innovation and ensuring safety. And it was riddled with laws and stuff. And it really sort of stifled, the automotive industry and kept them in horse and carriage for quite some time. Whereas in the US, they were thinking about, no, the future here is in automotive. Let's get the horse and carriages out of the way to move for automotive. So different ways of thinking about it. And they kind of lean back on that and say, hey, the US has done this before. We just need to do it again. This is who we are. It's a very patriotic tone to it, to get people riled up, I suppose.
Let me walk through the 4 pillars of this thing and try to distill it down to those 4. So it's chips, data, energy, and talent. Mm-hmm. And those are the recipe for achieving the accomplishment of these strategic objectives for the country and for OpenAI and its role in it. So the first one is chips. And I mentioned earlier the alliance that they're proposing, an AI compact to streamline and control the distribution of supply chains for chips and models so that, our chips and our models only go to our partners and cannot get, and you've seen that already underway under the Biden administration, putting export controls on chips to China. The second part is they're incentivizing AI companies to deploy their products to allied and partner nations. So they're asking the government to incentivize AI companies to do that. So specifically to deliver in a coordinated fashion the results of our investments and provide some sharing there. Now on data, They want to ensure that AI can learn from universal publicly available information, and they want the government to begin digitizing the data they have that's currently in analog form, so that can be used for training. Now, that's a big process, converting analog, like printed books and printed papers, into digital form. So optical character recognition, translating all of this stuff into the form that the AI can learn from. Okay, that's data. So they see that as an important part of the mission. Energy. That's the purpose of the establishment of the AI economic zones. Speed up permitting process so data centers and energy supplying to those data centers can be built, and dramatically increase federal spending on power and data transmission. So they posited this creation of a national AI infrastructure highway program, like the interstate highway system was created literally out of the World War II experience to allow us to move tanks around the country very quickly. Well, similarly here in this new AI race, they want an AI infrastructure highway investment to connect regional power and communication grids so that we have a fault tolerant and blast resistant system to manage our AI against attack from foreign countries, including, the saber rattling that you hear from Kim Jong-un, sending, ballistic missiles over to the US. Now, on to energy. Establishing, I'm sorry, I already hit energy. Sorry. Talent. They want to create AI research labs with a trained workforce aligned with local industries, but also as a sort of a farm system for the AI talent that's necessary to support the national security investment. And now here's the one-liner that I think is important and interesting to me, and that is they want a nationwide AI education strategy, starting early in education and preparing the next generations of our population to be really AI literate. And we've, as part of the Daily AI Show, that's been one of our missions for sure, is to have people be knowledgeable about and have access to resources that can help them learn how to use AI themselves. And so the AI blueprint from OpenAI is asking for investment from the government in programs to develop from the earliest beginnings a skilled AI workforce across the United States.
Yeah, it's a good breakdown of the four pillars on that, because I want to make sure we definitely got to that. One of the things that I want to bring up here is, again, something that Chris McKay mentioned in his article. Again, I told you I really liked his breakdown of it, and I'll share those links. I'll probably do that in the newsletter for anybody that wants to read more into it. Here's something he said he felt was missing, and I think it's a good point to put. He said, but for all the blueprint's merits, what truly stands out is what is missing. While OpenAI explicitly outlines the vast resource, regulatory alignments, and infrastructure support it wants from the nation, there is scant detail on what it will provide in return. In my view, an accompanying, quote, promise to America is vital. A public, enforceable pledge outlining how frontier model providers plan to share the benefits and mitigate the risks. Such a promise might include guaranteed access for public institutions, transparent job creations, binding safety and transparency commitments. And he goes on to say, commitments like these would show an authentic spirit of partnership rather than merely seeking favorable regulations. AI companies would be stepping forward as co-creators of America's AI future, bound by specific obligations to the people whose investments and trust they rely upon. I think it's a very valid point that isn't really, I mean, I wouldn't have thought of that myself when I was reading Chris's article. I thought, yeah, that's a solid point, that here's what we need from the US. Here's what we need the federal government to do so that everybody can be safe, but also read between the lines so OpenAI can prosper, right? That's definitely part of it. This is what we need. Yeah. We need data centers. We need more power. We need the US to invest in fusion and fission, because these are going to be critical for us to run our data centers to have OpenAI succeed and create the next, and keep creating the next frontier models. But it's a valid point. I'm just curious what you guys think about that. It is lacking. Even though they call it an open document, it does seem to be lacking the other side of the coin, which is, if all of this was to line up, here's what we feel like we can provide to the U.S. public. Whatever. It's
Yeah,
the
look,
economy's back.
yeah. So in my notes, and I'm not going to read them all out, but I mentioned variations of that theme multiple times. That there was definitely a one-sided perspective there. Lots of, that's why I said at the beginning, I thought there was a lot of Pollyanna words in there. Lots of, this is going to be wonderful and we're all going to be rich and have a wonderful life, but not a lot of, here's what we guarantee if the taxpayer's dollar is going to be invested into our company, i.e. OpenAI's company, because this document is obviously about OpenAI and their product and their service. So 100% agree there, Brian. If the government is going to do that, then they need to get some sort of commitment that it's not going to be a one-sided, we'll take it and we'll do what we want with it kind of deal. Because once the genie's out of the bottle, then the trouble hits. I wanted to read a comment I made on page 5, which was titled "Where We Stand," and one of the sentences in there talks about the 175 billion, and it says if the US doesn't attract these funds, they'll flow to China-backed projects strengthening the Chinese Communist Party's global influence. And I made the comment here, the chances are pretty good. I'm not Chinese, don't have any insight, but the chances are that China has few or no guardrails around AI development in their area. So at what point does this give them enough of a competitive advantage that it's going to start encouraging US firms and or the government to lower their guardrails? And to me, safety is the biggest issue. And then the economic aspect, like lots of great jobs for people to learn the new skills, but are we still going to end up with millions or hundreds of millions of people out of a job because they've suddenly been replaced by a $50 or $100 a month AI tool subscription? So so a lot of big concerns I still have with all of this.
I'm glad you brought up the 175 billion number. That comes up a couple times in this blueprint. And I actually went to Perplexity with this because I was curious where that number came from. Was it something that everybody sort of agrees upon? Well, it turns out no, it's just a projected number from OpenAI. But when I really dug in and I really pushed on the Perplexity to come back and say, but where's the true source of this number? Is it an actual verified number? And it's not. It's just it presents it as a number that they feel is correct. However, there's several other sources that have different numbers based on what they think that number is. So when you read this paper objectively, you just have to remember that 175 billion isn't like written in stone. It's just a number that OpenAI is projecting.
I actually thought that number to me seemed a bit low. Like it wouldn't be surprising to me if it gets into the $1 trillion+ range as things start to progress. We're talking about, I think I read recently that Google is either buying a nuclear reactor or at least buying the entire power output of a nuclear reactor from someone. I mean, we're not talking $50 a month for a subscription for that. That's big dollars. And if you've got other companies, OpenAI is not going to sit around and twiddle their thumbs with Google's doing that, and ditto for whatever Musk is doing for Grok, etc. So, I would be not surprised if that number was grossly underrated.
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft has a deal with the people who run 3 Mile Island to bring back on one of the reactors there. That's a Microsoft deal. Google has invested heavily into some of these newer, smaller nuclear reactors, not the old smokestacks or steam stacks. They really should be.
Yes, it's the SMR ones that don't actually run yet, but yes.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not saying they're online yet, but they're definitely investing in these because they know they need them, and they need them closer to their data centers to produce the amount of power necessary to do this. Okay. So I want to kind of wrap up here. Again, and for anybody that's not sure, because I know we had some comments about the name of this article, like people came in late in the live comments, which is fine. This is the title of this PDF is called AI in America, OpenAI's Economic Blueprint. It was obviously released by OpenAI, and the author on this page is Chris Lehane, Vice President, Global Affairs. So that's the one we're talking about. OpenAI has a blog that does a summary of this that you can find on their website. And then there's a link to this actual PDF that anybody can download. In fact, I think Greg in our comments was saying, by the way, I'm throwing all this into Google Notebook LM in order to get like the podcast version of it. Absolutely. Our point to bringing this to you is we thought this was really interesting. It just literally came out this week. Then within days of this, we also had the UK's announcement about their economic plan with AI and how they're going to take a more proactive approach. And I think we'll see this again and again. Obviously, other countries and them putting out their blueprints as well, or whatever they might call it, or actually putting things in place. So we thought it was valuable and something to bring back to you guys and just have a conversation about. We're not experts. We're here to talk about it openly and give you our opinions on it. But this is also an opportunity for everybody to go take a peek or throw it in Google Notebook LM and get a summary of it and, see what you think about it. And obviously, let us know in the future, what you thought about this blueprint. And they say it's an open document that's going to change. And obviously them putting this out in when they did only a few days out from the change of the presidency here in the United States, obviously it's a bit of it feels like that jockeying position and making sure that they're in the right place over the next 4 years during a Trump presidency, which we'll all have to wait and see how that shakes out in terms of what that means for AI in the next 4 years. But they're certainly taking it seriously and want to make sure they have a seat at the table and they're not boxed out by anybody in the government. So any last thoughts on this before we wrap it up and we say goodbye for the weekend? No? Aaron?
Yep. So one quick one. One of the things I thought about was that potentially this could end up, if you look at OpenAI as taking a position, we want to be number one, we want all the investment in us. But this could potentially, I think, turn into a closed versus open source, OpenAI LLM type model scenario. Linux versus Windows, for example. So, we've got some reasonably decent open source models out there, both from Facebook and Mistral, for example. I just wonder how much that's going to ramp up the competition on that side of the space once people start to see that OpenAI is trying to grab all the goodies, as it were.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say too is Greg just happened to say this in the comments. The tech's all jockeyed with the past admins. Why is this a surprise? I don't think we're saying this is a surprise. I don't think any of us, the three of us, we're saying this is a surprise at all. And it might have just been more of a rhetorical question, but I just wanted to bring it up. Like, no, I don't like any of us here are surprised. We've been following AI. We talk about it 5 days a week. This is not a surprise. It's more about just bringing this information to everybody else.
Especially given how much influence and power Elon Musk has in the mix. And because he's a direct competitor, a profit-making competitor of OpenAI and all the other players in AI.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, listen, we'll leave it there. Thank you for all the comments as always. Thanks for everybody hanging out with us. Thanks for a great week. Thank you, Eran, for joining us. I know it's late there, but we always appreciate it.
My pleasure. I'll try and come here a couple of times as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We have quite a few more conversations to have next week. So as of right now, we're going to be talking about where are we with portable devices on Monday, things like the Rabbit, Humane, the Pin, all these things, right? Like where are they now? And also what do we see coming out of CES and where do we think that stuff is going in 2025? So that would be a fun conversation on Monday. We're going to be talking about all the different coding agents. We've got Replit and Devin and Bolt and Zed.dev. We've got so many different types of coding agents. Andy has been working harder than any of us using those tools. So that's going to be on Tuesday. Wednesday, we always have the news. Thursday, we're going to be talking about the World Economic Forum and some information they released in the last week. That'll be really interesting. And I think we'll also play with everybody going out to Davos, which is starting this week. And so you have everybody talking about, Sam Altman will be out there. There'll be more to come out. We'll probably talk about that on Thursday. And then next Friday will be our 2-week bi-week recap. There it is. Let's finish strong on a Friday, Brian. You can do it. You can do it. We have a recap show we do every other Friday when we can, where we'll revisit any of the topics we've had over the last 2 weeks. So there you go. There's everything coming up over the next 2 weeks. Don't forget this Sunday, we're going to be putting out our latest newsletter. It's free. You can sign up by going to thedailyAIshow.com. We always have a lot of fun with that. And a lot of the information that didn't get into the show or links, we get into the newsletter. So you have it all in one place. Okay. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks everybody for joining us. And we will see you again on Monday.
See you later, everyone.